9 experienced hikers vanish in the Russian mountains. When rescuers find them weeks later, their tent is shredded from the inside. Bodies scattered, some barefoot, some with crushed skulls, one missing her tongue. The cause? Still officially unknown. This isn't a horror movie. This is the real Dyatlov Pass Incident. What happened that night in 1959? Avalanche? Secret weapons? Or something even stranger? In 1959, deep in the icy wilderness of the Ural Mountains in Soviet Russia, 9 hikers embarked on what was supposed to be a routine expedition. But what they encountered would become one of the most enduring, chilling, and baffling mysteries of the 20th century. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, a tragedy that left behind more questions than answers. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student. Alongside him were 8 other students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, each with significant experience in hiking and skiing. This was not a team of amateurs. These were people who had tackled harsh winters and tough terrain before. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a remote mountain whose name eerily translates from the Mansi language to "don't go there." They began their journey on January 27, 1959. Spirits were high. Diaries and photographs recovered later painted a picture of camaraderie and determination. The expedition was supposed to take a few weeks, but as they advanced, the weather worsened. Heavy snow and low visibility slowed their progress, and eventually they veered off course. On February 1st, they set up camp on the slope of a mountain called Kholat Syakhl, translated as Mountain of the Dead. They never left. When the hikers failed to send a telegram by the agreed-upon date, families and friends became concerned. After several days, a search party was assembled. What they discovered was nothing short of horrifying. On February 26th, rescuers found the hikers' tent, collapsed and half buried in snow. But that wasn't the shocking part. The tent had been slashed open from the inside. Personal belongings, boots, coats, food, all left behind. It was as if the hikers had fled in panic into the freezing night, some in socks, some barefoot. Nearby, under a cedar tree, searchers found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were both wearing only underwear. Their hands were damaged, likely from climbing the tree, perhaps in an attempt to escape or look for help. 3 more bodies were found between the tree and the tent: Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slagodin. It looked like they were trying to return to the tent before succumbing to the cold. But the most disturbing part came 2 months later. The remaining 4 bodies, Ludmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, were found in a ravine, partially buried under several feet of snow. These bodies showed brutal, inexplicable injuries. Thibault-Brignol had a crushed skull. Zolotaryov and Dubinina had shattered ribs, injuries likened to those from a car crash. Yet their bodies showed no external wounds, no bruises, no cuts. Dubinina's tongue and eyes were missing. Some of their clothing tested positive for radiation. The Soviet investigation concluded that the hikers died due to a compelling natural force. Case closed. Files sealed. But this vague explanation only deepened the mystery. What kind of natural force causes internal trauma without external injury? Why were they radioactive? Why would seasoned hikers flee their tent into lethal temperatures without proper clothing? Some investigators proposed an avalanche. They suggested the group, fearing they would be buried, slashed open the tent and ran. But skeptics point out that the terrain was too shallow for an avalanche and there were no signs of snow movement. Plus, the tent was still partially standing and the bodies were not buried in snow as you'd expect. Another explanation? Infrasound. Wind passing over the mountain might have created low-frequency sounds that trigger panic and disorientation in the human brain. The so-called Kármán vortex street theory suggests these sound waves could have driven the hikers into irrational behavior, making them flee into the cold. But could sound waves really cause lethal internal injuries? And here's where things get more sinister. Some believe the hikers were victims of secret Soviet military tests. Around the time of the incident, parachute mines were being tested in the area. These mines detonate mid-air, producing high-pressure shockwaves, possibly explaining the internal injuries without external wounds. The orange orbs seen in the sky by locals at the time? Possibly explosions from these devices. The radiation? Maybe exposure to experimental materials. Was the site cleaned up by military forces? Was the investigation a cover-up? If you're intrigued by how real-world events intersect with psychology and perception, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell. Next Reel dives into mysteries like false memories, the bystander effect, and how your brain creates reality. Videos that challenge how we think and what we believe. Don't miss out. Let's return to the slopes of Dyatlov Pass. Other more sensational theories include attacks by wild animals, or even a Yeti, but there were no bite marks, no tracks, no defensive wounds. The Mansi people, indigenous to the region, were also considered suspects, but they helped in the search and had no motive or history of violence. And then there's hypothermia's strange cousin, paradoxical undressing. As the body shuts down in extreme cold, victims sometimes feel burning warmth and start removing clothing. This might explain some of the partial nudity, but not the crushed ribs, missing eyes, or tongue. In 2021, a Swiss researcher tried to revalidate the avalanche theory using computer models and snow simulation. He concluded that a small slab avalanche could have displaced the hikers and caused panic. But still, why no signs of snow movement? And why were only some of the hikers fatally injured, while others were not? What if multiple things went wrong? What if the group experienced a rare but powerful sound phenomenon triggering panic? Then, fleeing down the slope, some fell into the ravine and suffered fatal injuries. Hypothermia took care of the rest. But even this fails to account for the radiation. The Dyatlov Pass incident continues to baffle experts, attract documentaries, podcasts, and endless Reddit threads. It straddles the line between psychological breakdown and physical trauma, between natural tragedy and possible conspiracy. From a psychological lens, the story taps into deep-rooted human fears of being watched, of sudden danger, of nature's indifferent brutality. It reminds us how fragile life is, even for those who are prepared, and how little we may truly understand about what hides in the wilderness. Today, Dyatlov Pass is a tourist site. A monument stands to honor the 9 victims. Their families still seek answers, and new evidence is occasionally brought to light, but never anything definitive. It's no longer just a mystery, it's a mirror. A mirror that reflects our need to make sense of the senseless, our craving for closure, our fear of the unknown. Was it nature? Military secrecy, psychological collapse, or something we still can't name? We may never know, but we keep asking. And sometimes that's the real power of a mystery, not in the answer, but in the journey it takes us on. Thanks for watching. This is Next Reel. Check out our mind-bending mysteries playlist for more unsolved psychological puzzles. New episodes every Monday and Thursday at 2 p.m. EST. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell to join the investigation.